this episode, we're going to master incident tracking as a leadership skill, because tracking is what turns a chaotic situation into controlled progress. Beginners often think tracking is paperwork that slows the team down, but in real incident management, tracking is how you prevent duplicated work, missed steps, and conflicting stories. Tracking is also how you protect decision-making, because leaders can't make good choices if they don't know what has been done, what is in progress, and what is blocked. During an incident, everyone is busy and stressed, and memory becomes unreliable, so a shared record becomes the team's external brain. The goal is not to create a perfect archive while the building is on fire, but to maintain enough structure that work moves forward with clarity and accountability. On the exam, scenarios often include signs of tracking failure, like confusion about owners, missed deadlines, or inaccurate updates, and the best next step is frequently to strengthen tracking discipline. By the end, you should be able to explain what good tracking looks like, why it matters, and how to keep status accurate without drowning the team in administration. A simple definition helps. Incident tracking is the practice of recording tasks, owners, deadlines, dependencies, and status so the response stays coordinated and verifiable. The key word is practice, because tracking is not a single tool or a single document. It is a behavior the team performs consistently. Tracking also has two audiences: the response team, which needs details to coordinate actions, and stakeholders, who need accurate summaries to make business decisions. If the team's internal tracking is weak, stakeholder updates become guesswork, and guesswork becomes misinformation. Another important point is that tracking is not only about tasks, it is about decisions and their reasons, because decisions shape the response and must be defensible later. When you track decisions, you capture what was chosen, who approved it, when it happened, and what evidence supported it, which prevents confusion and supports after-action learning. Beginners sometimes fear tracking because it seems like extra work, but it is actually an efficiency multiplier because it reduces rework and improves alignment. Strong tracking is one of the most powerful ways to reduce stress in an incident because it creates order. Tasking is the first pillar of tracking, and tasking means converting goals into specific actions that someone will complete. A task should be concrete enough that a person can do it and a leader can verify when it is done, and vague tasks are a tracking poison. If a task says investigate the issue, nobody knows what done means, and the task can stretch indefinitely. A better task is something like validate whether the suspicious access is still active, identify affected accounts, or collect relevant evidence for the timeline, because those have clear outcomes. Tasking also includes prioritization, because not all tasks are equal, and the team must focus first on actions that reduce harm, restore clarity, or unlock other work. In a fast-moving incident, task lists can explode, and the leader's job is to keep the list meaningful by focusing on tasks that align with the current response goals. If tasks are not aligned, the list becomes busy work and people stop trusting it. When the exam asks about improving response organization, a strong answer often includes creating clear tasks that match goals and can be tracked to completion. Owners are the second pillar, and ownership is the cure for the common incident disease of group responsibility. Each task should have one primary owner, meaning one person who is responsible for driving it to completion and reporting status. That owner can consult others or delegate parts, but they remain the accountable point of contact for progress. Without an owner, tasks drift because everyone assumes someone else is handling them, and drift is dangerous because it creates silent failures. Ownership also supports clean handoffs, because when shifts change or teams rotate, the owner role can be transferred deliberately rather than leaving tasks floating. For beginners, it helps to remember that ownership is not blame, it is clarity, and clarity is what prevents mistakes. A leader who assigns owners is not being controlling. They are creating the structure that lets people work effectively together. In exam scenarios, if you see confusion about who is doing what, the best leadership move is often to assign clear owners and confirm that those owners accept the task. Deadlines are the third pillar, and deadlines matter because incidents punish delay, but deadlines must be realistic to be useful. A deadline without realism is just pressure, and pressure can lead to sloppy work and bad decisions. A good incident leader uses deadlines as coordination tools, not as threats, and they tie deadlines to priorities and dependencies. For example, a deadline to validate whether active compromise is ongoing might be sooner than a deadline to perform longer-term hardening improvements, because immediate risk drives urgency. Deadlines also help with stakeholder communication, because stakeholders often ask when things will be resolved, and a leader needs grounded estimates rather than hopeful guesses. Another important idea is that some tasks have implicit deadlines based on impact, such as restoring critical services, while others have deadlines based on obligations, like notifications. Tracking helps you keep those time pressures visible so they don't surprise you later. On the exam, choices that include setting deadlines and revisiting them based on new information often reflect mature incident management. Status accuracy is the fourth pillar, and it may be the most important because inaccurate status is worse than no status. Inaccurate status creates false confidence, causes stakeholders to make bad decisions, and can lead teams to stop containment too early or resume operations before trust is restored. Status becomes inaccurate when people report progress based on assumptions, optimism, or incomplete information. It also becomes inaccurate when the tracking record is not updated consistently or when too many parallel sources of truth exist. A disciplined team uses clear status categories, such as not started, in progress, blocked, and complete, but the categories matter less than the honesty behind them. If a task is blocked, the tracking system should capture what is blocking it, such as missing access, missing approval, or missing evidence. That turns a blocked task into a leadership problem that can be resolved, rather than a silent delay. Beginners should remember that saying blocked is not failure. It is information, and information is what leaders need to adjust the plan. Status accuracy depends heavily on the source of truth concept, which is the agreed place where the current record lives. During incidents, people naturally take notes in many places, and if those notes are not consolidated, the team ends up with multiple competing stories. The leader must declare and protect a single source of truth for tasks, decisions, and key timeline items, and then ensure that updates flow into it. This does not mean the leader does all updates. It means someone owns maintaining the record and can keep it current. The source of truth also makes communication easier, because the communications lead can rely on it for stakeholder updates, reducing the risk of contradictory messages. When the exam presents a scenario where different teams disagree about status, it is often pointing to the lack of a unified source of truth. The best next step in those cases is frequently to consolidate status, assign ownership of the record, and enforce update discipline. That is incident leadership because it creates a shared reality. Tracking also needs to capture dependencies, which are relationships where one task cannot be completed until another is done. Dependencies are common in incidents, such as needing approval before isolating a system, needing evidence before making a public statement, or needing a system owner's input before changing configuration. If dependencies are not tracked, tasks appear to be stalled for no reason, and people waste time rechecking them. Tracking dependencies also helps leaders plan parallel work, because some tasks can be done while waiting for a dependency, and that improves efficiency. For beginners, it can help to think of dependencies like a traffic intersection, where you need to know which cars have the right of way, otherwise everyone either crashes or waits forever. When the team understands dependencies, they can keep moving without chaos. Exam scenarios that involve delays often reward answers that identify the blocking dependency and resolve it through escalation or alternate action. That is a tracking mindset. Find the bottleneck, name it, and remove it. Another critical tracking element is decision logging, because incidents are defined by decisions, and those decisions must be explainable later. Decision logging means recording what decision was made, when it was made, who approved it, and what evidence or reasoning supported it. This is not a legal document in the moment. It is a memory aid that prevents the team from revisiting the same debate repeatedly. It also protects the team from second-guessing and conflict, because the record shows the context and constraints under which the decision was made. Decision logs also support after-action reviews, because they show how the team's thinking evolved and where decision points were difficult. Beginners often assume they will remember why a choice was made, but stress makes memory unreliable, and weeks later, people can confidently misremember. A decision record prevents that drift and makes improvement possible. On the exam, answers that emphasize documenting key decisions and maintaining accurate records often reflect leadership maturity. Incident tracking also has to scale, because as incidents grow, the number of tasks and participants grows, and the tracking system must prevent overload rather than becoming overload itself. Scaling is achieved by keeping tasks appropriately granular, grouping related tasks mentally under goals, and avoiding creating tasks that are too tiny or too broad. It also involves assigning someone to coordinate tracking so that updates are consistent, and creating a rhythm of brief status check-ins where owners report progress and blockers. Those check-ins should be short and focused, because long meetings reduce the time available for actual work. A disciplined rhythm also supports well-being, because it reduces constant interruptions and gives responders predictable moments to sync. Scaling also involves being willing to retire tasks that are no longer relevant, because incidents evolve and old assumptions become obsolete. If the tracking list includes outdated tasks, it becomes confusing and people stop trusting it. Trust in the tracking system is essential because without trust, people stop updating and the system collapses. A common misconception is that tracking is only useful for managers and not for technical responders, but technical responders benefit directly because tracking reduces duplicate effort and clarifies priorities. If a responder knows someone else is already validating a set of logs, they can focus on a different workstream rather than repeating work. If they know the current containment goal is to stop lateral movement, they can prioritize tasks that support that goal rather than chasing unrelated anomalies. If they can see which tasks are blocked by approvals, they can choose tasks that don't depend on those approvals and keep progress moving. Tracking also protects responders from unrealistic expectations because it reveals capacity constraints and shows what is actually in progress. That creates transparency, which reduces pressure and improves decision quality. For beginners, the key idea is that tracking is a collaboration tool, not a surveillance tool. When it's done well, it makes everyone's job easier during a stressful event. To close, mastering incident tracking means mastering the practical disciplines that keep response organized: clear tasks, single owners, realistic deadlines, and accurate status anchored in a single source of truth. Good tasking turns goals into verifiable actions. Ownership prevents drift. Deadlines coordinate urgency without creating chaos, and status accuracy protects decision-making and stakeholder trust. Tracking also captures dependencies and key decisions so the team can move forward without repeating debates or losing continuity during handoffs. When incidents grow, disciplined tracking scales the response by maintaining rhythm, reducing duplicate work, and keeping priorities aligned with evolving goals. On the GCIL exam, scenarios often reveal tracking weaknesses, and the strongest responses frequently involve restoring clarity through ownership, documentation, and reliable status. If you can explain tracking in plain language and connect it to real incident outcomes, you're demonstrating a core incident leader capability, turning chaos into coordinated progress that can be trusted.
Thanks for listening. For more audio courses, daily newsletters, and more, please visit BareMetalCyber.com.